Ready? Ready to start?
People are coming in. I reckon we go.
Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Diana Melham, and I'm the chair of the Board of Management at Advocacy for Inclusion, or AFI for short. I'm a middle-aged woman with dark brown shoulder-length hair. I'm wearing a multicolored top and green glasses. My background is beige with the logos of International Day of People with Disability, AFI, and Women with Disabilities, ACT. I warmly welcome you all to this afternoon's event for the International Day of People with Disability, and thank you for joining us as we mark the ACT's first fully community-led and controlled celebrations for I-Day here in Canberra, and I believe in Australia. AFI are hosting this event in conjunction with Women with Disabilities, ACT, and our community partners. We're also supported by the ACT government. To begin today's proceedings, I'd like to ask our colleague Craig to provide us with a acknowledgement of country.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Di. My name is Craig Wallace. I'm the Head of Policy for Advocacy for Inclusion. I'm on a yellow background with the logos for International Day of People with Disability, Advocacy for Inclusion, and Women with Disabilities, ACT. And I'm a middle-aged man wearing a shirt and tie and seated in a wheelchair with not much hair. I'd like to, first of all, offer apologies from Auntie Violet, who would very much like to have been here today, but has been caught up through an internet access issue. I know that if Auntie Violet was here, she would want to welcome us to the lands of the Ngunnawal people here in the Australian Capital Territory. Also, to say that sovereignty was never ceded and land was stolen from that. The work that we're doing through International Day and for people with disabilities more broadly is really adjacent to and important to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. One of the themes of the day that resonated when we were talking to Auntie Violet was around self-direction and community control, which is also a major theme for Aboriginal people. So on behalf of AFI, welcome to this event, and we also acknowledge that we are coming to you respectively on the lands of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. I also want to acknowledge everyone who's joining us today with lived experience of disability. AFI is a disabled people's organisation. This means the majority of the board and staff are people with disability. The expertise, the perspectives, and the experiences of people with disability is at the heart of everything that we do. I want to thank all of you for joining us today and for being part of AFI, and also acknowledge our partners, especially Women with Disabilities ACT, as well as ACT Down Syndrome and Intellectual Disability ACT. Today's a really important day for our community, despite a challenging year, and I'm excited for today's event. Before we start, I'll begin with some housekeeping. As this is a webinar, your microphone and video are turned off to assist with the smooth running of the event. We invite you to engage via the chat function. We're recording today's forum, and we'll also be using images from today in our work. If you have any concerns, please let our team know in the chat. Roz and Carla are on hand for any support that you need. I also want to go through some accessibility pointers here on the forum. Our Auslan interpreters will be spotlighted and should be visible on the screen with the panel at all times. Thank you to Kelly and Georgia for interpreting our event. Thank you too to our captioners. Live captioning can also be accessed directly in Zoom or via a separate screen. To see the captions in Zoom, depending on the device that you're using, you can select CC at the bottom or top of your screen. We'll post the link to access captions by a separate screen in the chat now. Please remember to speak at a rate where our interpreters and captioners can keep up in support of making this an accessible session for all of us. We're now moving on to the formal part of today's proceedings. This is an important day which marks the first community-led and controlled International Day of People with Disability celebrations in the ACT. This has been 3 years in the making. And Advocacy for Inclusion and Women with Disabilities ACT, together with our allies in the disability community, have been working hard to ensure that iDay is in community hands and to consult with the community on what they want the day to look like. As I'm sure most of you are aware, iDay is a UN-sanctioned day celebrated on the 3rd of December each year which Australia has marked since 1992. This year's United Nations theme for International Day of People with Disability is amplifying the leadership of persons with disabilities for an inclusive and sustainable future, which is fitting as the ACT government are transitioning iDay celebrations in our territory from government to community control. The ACT is the first jurisdiction anywhere in Australia to move iDay to community control, and this resonates with the long history of disability rights work anchored in nothing about us without us. We appreciate the way the ACT government has taken feedback on board and embraced the idea. This includes work across several ministers, including Emma Davidson and Rachel Stephen-Smith. We acknowledge their enthusiasm as well as the commitment that Suzanne Orr has demonstrated to leading a social model approach through a stewardship of the Inclusion Bill, which took a social model approach. Now, Minister Orr is going to be with us today, but they are just juggling the timing. So when Minister Orr joins us, we'll introduce her to provide us with, to address us. But what we might do is we'll move on, and we're now going to hear from our community leaders and members of the steering group about the new charter and what it means to them. The charter was an idea from the strategic conversation consultation that we held back in May this year. It's been developed collaboratively with disability organisations and picks up feedback from our appreciative inquiry and engagement over many months. It raised expectations of what iDay can be and also what we don't want it to be, and binds us to genuine shared ownership. This is not just another project for us. Because the charter sits at the heart of the new approach, we've invited each of the community members, including the co-chairs and new members of the steering committee, to identify one paragraph or phrase and discuss how it speaks to their hopes and aspirations for the day. I'll now ask the community leaders to speak for a couple of minutes each, and we'll hand you over to them now. Kat, if you would like to begin, thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'll just introduce myself first. So my name is Kat Reid. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm the CEO at Women with Disabilities ACT. I am a person in their late 20s with long dark brown hair. I'm wearing a burgundy red coloured top, and my logo background is a light blue with the Women with Disabilities ACT logo, the People with Disability, the International Day of People with Disabilities logo, and the Advocacy for Inclusion logo as well. So I'm very honoured to be the co-chair of the inaugural iDay committee. And the phrase that I've chosen from the charter is the one that says, create opportunities for people with disability to inform, lead, and participate at all levels. So I chose this one because for me, I feel as though the nothing about us without us is very important, but it's important to also back that up with creating those opportunities and building skills and building our community. I think it's very much a conversation at the moment to talk about bringing people into the room, but I think it's another question entirely to make sure that those people have the skills, have the confidence, and are appropriately supported as well to have their input And for me, I feel like for International Day of People with Disability, I think it's not just about us running the event and running the week, it's also about us passing it over to the community and building up the community to do the week with us and be equal participants. So that's why I chose that particular phrase.
Thanks, Kat. And Minister Orr has joined us. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the Minister for Disability, Ms. Suzanne Orr, MLA to officially hand iDay over from the ACT government to the disability community and make some comments on the charter that we're launching today. So it's over to you, Minister. So just double checking, is the Minister with us? Okay, so what we might do while we're waiting to confirm that the Minister has joined us, we might hand over to Craig.
Sorry to interrupt, Di. It looks like the Minister has joined via the audience link, so they don't have access to speak. So if someone can sort that out.
Thank you. Carla or Roz, are you able to sort out access for the Minister?
Yes, I just don't see her in the attendance list. Can someone?
They've been posting in the chat under the attendees, just under Suzanne.
Just under Suzanne? Thank you.
We might post maybe the link to the panelist in the chat. That might be the easiest way to make sure they get it. Thanks, Di. Look, my name's Craig Wallace. I'm the Head of Policy for Advocacy for Inclusion. I'm here against a yellow background with the logos for iDay and the community partners at WIDACT and Advocacy for Inclusion. And I'm an older person in a wheelchair wearing a shirt and tie. The paragraph that I have chosen says that the celebrations of the International Day should deliver the core promise of the disability rights movement, nothing about us without us, and that we welcome the fact that the ACT as the national capital is the first jurisdiction to make this move to community control, and that we're optimistic that we're not the last. I was thinking about what I'd say in response to this, and I decided I can't really say it any better than one of the AFI members, Sam Connor, who has endorsed the charter using the endorsement function that's on our new website, which we'll post in chat. So she said that for too long, governments have co-opted and curated our stories and struggles, packaging them into performative celebrations while failing to address the systemic inequalities that oppress us. The principle of nothing about us without us demands not only representation, but authority. Disabled people know the weight of exclusion and the power of collective action. We are the ones who hold the stories of triumph and rage, of pride and ableism. We don't want our lives reduced to palatable talking points. This is not their day to lead. It is ours to claim. IDPWD must remain in the hands of disabled people, unapologetically bold, loud and grounded in the truths we live every day. Give us back our day. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Now I would like to hand over to Minister Orr. And Minister, perhaps if you'd like to start start with providing a short visual description of your appearance, and that will help with the accessibility of our event. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. So I am a female. I'm in my 40s, although I don't always like admitting that. I have brown hair down to my shoulders. It's a bit wavy, and I wear glasses. And today I'm wearing I think it's a burnt orange jacket. I think that's the official colour of it, and a green shirt. And I'm very, very pleased and excited to be here with you today to hand over the celebrations of iDay to be community-led. But before we get into saying how excited I am, can I just acknowledge that we are meeting on the lands of the Ngunnawal people and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and all families and people with a connection to this country. So again, thank you very much for having me. We are in the middle of a sitting day, but I was very, very grateful that I've been able to attend and join you in to officially hand over the I-Day celebrations. Would like to really acknowledge Women with Disabilities, ACT and Advocacy for Inclusion for all of their work on this. I think our MC has already said this has been a number of years in the making, and I think it's only going to go from strength to strength. So in fitting with the theme of amplifying the leadership of persons with disabilities for an inclusive and sustainable future, here's to many more community-led celebrations in honour of I-Day. And I've also would just like to let you know I've had a chat with the Chief Minister, and on behalf of the ACT government, I will be endorsing the charter. I believe a number of the organisations have, but we'll be joining that too. So looking forward to continuing to work with you, seeing all the great events that have come about, and happy to hand back to you to go forward with, and I look forward to enjoying what comes next.
Thank you, Minister. We really appreciate you being here today, and thank you for your words of endorsement. Now, I'd like to hand over to Shannon to provide us with some thoughts and words.
My name's Shannon Kolak. I'm the CEO of ACT Down Syndrome and Intellectual Disability. I'm sitting next to my colleague, Angela. I am a woman in my mid-40s with brown hair. I have glasses and I'm wearing a black dress with Christmas decorations on it. The part of the charter I would like to read is under what are we doing to get there? To achieve this charter, we commit to observances that are planned, designed and delivered by people with disability and their organisations, are accessible and strive to provide accessible events and communications for people with all kinds of disability, including intellectual and cognitive disability, and create opportunities for people with disability to inform, lead and participate at all levels. I chose this part of the charter because I feel for people with intellectual disability, this is incredibly important. We and our community and everyone that I've spoken to within the community doesn't want an I-Day event that is led by the government, who perhaps are employing people that don't have disabilities. Like Craig said, we as a community don't want an I-Day event that other people are creating for people with disabilities. Here in our organisation, we would love to work alongside AFI and Women with Disabilities to ensure that people with intellectual disability can participate in all events and help organise them as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. And now it's time to meet the new steering committee. AFI and WIDAC put out a call for nominations from the disability community back in October. We received 13 nominations and it was a genuinely challenging and competitive field. We're pleased to announce that the members selected with the assistance from the Office of Disability are Liz Lee, Louise Bannister, Ravi Krishnamurthy, Liliana Russell, Fee Peel and Taryn Lee. We've invited the members of the steering committee to introduce themselves by speaking for a couple of minutes to a paragraph or phrase drawn from the new charter. As you do so, we'd appreciate a short visual description of your appearance for the events. I'd now like to call on Liz Lee.
Hello. Oh, I've unmuted myself. Can you hear me? Fabulous.
Yes, I can.
Hi, my name is Liz Lee. I am a woman in my mid-50s with brown hair that might have had a bit of help from a box. I'm wearing dark-rimmed glasses. I am wearing a black top and I have a blurred background as there is sunshine coming in behind me. I am a Caucasian woman and I'm sitting on the ground. And I'm also very, very thrilled and honoured to be here. I've been based in the ACT now for 15 years. I run an event every year for I-Day and I'm thrilled that it is now going to be in the hands of those of us with lived experience, and hoping that there'll be more support and understanding so that these events can be more supported, more understood, and be much more representational of our communities and the communities that live in and around us. The part of the Charter that I have chosen aligns with what ideas are behind the Charter. Our vision is that iDay is strongly supported, anticipated, and loved by people with disability throughout the Territory. This means people with disability feel they own our day and are in real and practical control of the direction of the celebrations, campaigns, and events. Our ambitions are large, high quality, and professional, but they are achievable and backed by sustainable capacity and resources and the sound governance which inspires confidence. Everybody feels involved and has the confidence that iDay is well run, that it reflects the diversity and intersectionality of our community and is never patronising or ableist, that it expresses the values and rights of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, has meaning and a sense of purpose, has a collaborative approach, moves the dial of change across the whole community for the whole year, and has impact that is measured through robust indicators. And I feel very passionately, and I know that everybody here will do, is that the notion of iDay has become rather tokenistic, and that there are another 364 days of the year, and that if we can be working collaboratively and collectively across the whole year, it means that iDay becomes a day of focus and celebration and sharing, but that the activities run throughout the year. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Liz. I'd now like to call on Louise Bannister.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name's Louise Bannister, but I prefer Lou. I use the pronouns she, her. I'm an older white woman with greeny browny eyes and short silver, sometimes spiky hair. I'm wearing a navy blue dress with pink flowers, a hot pink scarf, and a button that says "Nothing about us without us." And I'm sitting in my wheelchair. I've been a bit naughty today, and I've picked two phrases from the Charter. My favourite, which of course is "Nothing about us without us," and the other one, which is "People with disability feel that they own our day and are in real and practical control of the direction of the celebrations, campaigns, and events." I disengaged from iDay many years ago when it seemed to become a very tokenistic event. Often it was just a small morning tea hosted by service providers with no true wider community involvement. For me, iDay was not inclusive. It was not breaking down barriers or changing community assumptions. I felt I didn't really have anything to celebrate. But I'm now very excited that iDay is being put back into our community's hands. I look forward to the whole ACT community coming together to celebrate iDay events. We can now be visible, vocal, and proud. We can shine a bright light on the creativity and talent of the members of our disability community. We can build strong and cross-community partnerships. And most importantly, we can make iDay the first day of a year of celebration and engagement. Inclusion should be a foundation stone of everyday life in the ACT, not just something that we briefly think about on one day of the year. With nothing about us without us, iDay will now be a real day for us day, and I can't wait to celebrate. Thank you.
Thanks, Lou. I'll now call on Ravi Krishnamurthy.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Ravi Krishnamurthy, and my pronouns are he, him. I'm a middle-aged brown man with black hair, black eyes, and rectangular clear framed glasses. Today, I'm wearing a gray shirt having brown oak tree leaf prints. I would also like to acknowledge the land in which we are meeting today, Daura Nunawal, Yangu Nalamanin Dunimanin, Nanamalwari, Daurawari, Dindi, Wangirali, Jingin. I pay my respect to the elders of this country. Thanks to the Advocacy for Inclusion and Women with Disabilities, ACT, with the support of the Honorable Minister, Ms. Susan Ward from the ACT government, for launching the new community initiative, IDE ACT. As we gather here for our lives, our voices, I'm filled with hope and inspiration by the collective vision set forth in the Charter for the International Day of People with Disability in the ACT. A line that deeply resonates with me is, with vision, purpose, and collaboration, we look forward to the day creating opportunities for people with disability to discover and claim identity, raise our voices, exercise power, and gain freedom. This powerful statement reflects what I envision for the future, a future where every person with a disability is not just included, but leads the way in shaping their communities, building their identities, and amplifying their voices. The ACT's transition to community-controlled observances is a beacon of progress. It embodies the principle that drives the disability rights movement: nothing about us without us. It challenges us to ensure that inclusion is not just a value we uphold on IDE, but a standard we embed in every part of our society every day. I see a future where diversity within the disability community is celebrated, accessibility is a given, and the rights enshrined in the UN Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, these are all actively lived out. This is about more than one day. It is about building momentum for a change that lasts all year and empowers people to embrace their full potential. Together, through initiatives like this, we can create a society where self-direction, identity, and the power to lead are reality for all. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Ravi. I'd now like to call on Liliana Russell.
Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yes, we are.
Fantastic. I love it when technology works eventually. My name is Liliana Russell, and I am a middle-aged, mid-50s woman with copper shoulder-length hair. I am wearing a white shirt with my favorite earrings on today for good luck. My screen behind me is blurred. And I am in a nice quiet spot. It is a real honor to be part of this steering committee, and I'm very, very excited about what we are going to achieve together. I've been thinking long and hard about the Charter and a lot of the phrases and what was in it, and it was very difficult to actually choose just one. But I was just focusing on my own lived experience, and I think the words that really spoke to me the most clearly were that IDE is intended to raise community awareness, understanding, and appreciation of people with a disability. I think those three concepts throughout our lives, throughout our interactions with the community, throughout our interactions at work, at play, in social events are really, really important. I have a very, very strong belief in advocating for our young students as well. I'm involved in education, and I really think that this is going to be a fabulous day, but also a year-long event to really acknowledge what our students and children with disabilities are able to achieve. They are our future. They are what we want to encourage to do their best. We want to look at what their abilities are and to really promote those, to encourage those to step out of where they are and to try something different, to be acknowledged for who they are and what they can achieve, and to know that there is a bright, big future there ahead of them. So my view is sometimes to really make sure that our community is aware of where we are and what we do. I think sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And I think the more that we can inform, communicate, get our message across, the most important it is. This is going to be a really exciting opportunity for the ACT. This is a fantastic community that has wonderful people, wonderful community supporters, wonderful government support. And I think together as a steering committee and working towards next year's day in a year's time and what we can do to achieve that is a phenomenal opportunity that I'm very excited to be a part of.
Thanks, Liliana. I'd now like to call on Fee Peel.
Hi there. My name is Fee Peel. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a white-skinned human with short brown hairs, a little bit spiky up the top today, and I'm wearing black Bluetooth headphones. I have a blue shirt on, and I have the yellow Advocacy for Inclusion banner in the background. I have a feeling it's actually inverted because I'm reading it backwards, but it's there. So I want to acknowledge the First Nations people, the Aboriginal elders of the Ngunnawal lands, their elders past, present, emerging, and knowledge holders, and extend that welcome to anyone that is present. And I also too want to acknowledge the lived experience of many of us gathered here. I have chosen for my section of the statement, and I'm just going to pop it in the chat, expresses the values and the rights of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability. The reason I have chosen this is because for someone who has had all my life many invisible disabilities, until very recently when I became a wheelchair user, I felt very conflicted about being able to speak to the fact that I was disabled. And it wasn't until I found this UNCRPD that I finally understood the social model of disability. I finally understood that my limitations were not the disabling factor, that we were living in an environment with barriers that were created by our built environment, by the attitudinal barriers, by the ways in which this world has been built and designed for people without disabilities. And for me, that was formative in my advocacy work, in my work as a policy officer, in advising federal government, and now as an artist reclaiming their own practice and being able to consider access from the audience perspective, but also from the artist perspective on a stage and behind a stage. For me, this is so exciting that we have had this opportunity handed back to us here in the ACT. As Craig said, the first jurisdiction in the country to do this. We're often left with our voices appropriated, our stories appropriated, the inspo porn that we see that goes out particularly through the disability arts lens, but in other lenses as well. We get a chance to take the reins now and help to shape not only what this is going to look like for us here in the ACT, but to provide a beacon of hope and perhaps a framework for the rest of the country to come along for the ride. It's really wonderful to be here and a part of this, and I look forward to being part of the ongoing conversation.
Thanks, Bea. I'd now like to call on Taryn Lee.
Hi, my name is Taryn Lee. I go by they, them pronouns, and I would just like to acknowledge that I'm joining from Burloo or Perth, which is owned by the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. But I will be moving to the ACT in February of 2025. I am a young East Asian 18-year-old with black shoulder-length hair that has blonde highlights. The screen behind me is blurred, and I am wearing a black shirt under a checkered light pink and black cardigan, and I've got a silver necklace on. The phrase in the charter that reflects what I want the future to look like for people with disability is that it reflects the It reflects the diversity and intersectionality of our community and is never patronizing or ableist. This is because for most disabled people, myself included, my disability and the barriers I face because of it do not exist in isolation, and they never will. So it's important to acknowledge the intersectionality of our community. For me personally, with my lived experience, these intersectional traits include being queer and a person of color. And as a young person myself, I also want to make I-Day a celebration that includes young people without being patronizing or tokenistic. Disability doesn't have one formal image, and acknowledging that people with disability have a wide range of different experiences is crucial to creating a future for everyone and key to creating an I-Day event that reflects our entire community.
Thank you, Taryn. So now we've heard from leaders and people of influence about their hopes and aspirations for I-Day. Thank you all very much for sharing your reflections. We now want to hear and experience words and images from members which speak to their aspirations against our 4 new local themes: voice, power, identity, and self-direction. We'd like to provide you with an opportunity to experience a 10 minutes aside event and accessibility break while viewing the words and images. So please stay online, take a break if you need to, and enjoy. We're going to screen the PowerPoint presentation. It includes words and artwork by entrants which speak to the I-Day community themes of voice, power, identity, and self-direction. There are also photos by Andrew Sikorsky of Art Atelier, and these are featured on our new website. You can see a link to this in the chat. And please now take a break, enjoy the slideshow, and we'll be back for part 2 of our event at 1 o'clock. Thank you.
International Day of People with Disability, Advocacy for Inclusion, including People with Disabilities ACT, and Women with Disabilities ACT, presents International Day of People with Disability. Our lives, our voices, shaping the future through voice, power, identity, and self-direction. Side event, I-Day words and images. Welcome to our 10-minute side event and accessibility break. You can enjoy the words and images or take a break, but please remain logged in. We will be screening entries from our words and images call out, plus photos from the AFI photo library by Andrew Sikorsky, Art Atelier Photography, and a sneak preview of our new I-Day website. Enjoy. Meet the entrant, Ravi. I am Ravi, an individual with lived experience of disability. This entry speaks to the theme of our lives, our voices, by reflecting the power of self-expression and empowerment. It highlights the journey of finding one's voice within the disability community, while acknowledging the collective power we hold when we unite for self-direction and advocacy. The Power of Our Voices by Ravi. My voice is more than just words. It's a testament to my journey. Born from years of overcoming barriers, my voice embodies resilience, shaped by the strength of my community and shared experiences. As an advocate for inclusion, I've witnessed the transformative power of our collective voices. Together, we break silence, demand justice, and reclaim our rights. The power of our voices. When we speak with unity, we don't just raise our voices, we change the narrative. The power of our voices. Our voices carry the promise of a future where disability is celebrated, not marginalized. This is not just my voice, it is the voice of all who strive for inclusion and equality. Finding Voice by Robin. In this work, the artist explores her personal experience of how aging is allowing her the gift of speaking about her disability after a lifetime of denial and cover-up. This collage holds several symbols, such as the face of a baby doll trapped within a tightly woven structure on a background of discarded communication devices. An arm emerging from the base of the structure seems to be offering a gift of a golden ball to the old doll who lies underneath and appears stiff and unable to move. The organically shaped speech bubbles are different tones of the same colour. The evolving description resonated with the artist, and she added confetti to denote the relief and joy of giving voice to what was once hidden. About the artist. Robin is a retired counsellor and art therapist who uses creativity to explore and process unconscious material and life experiences. Robin has lived with a chronic pain condition and intermittent mobility issues since childhood. She creates intuitively and then phenomenologically describes the work to find meaning and give voice to the object. About the artist continued. Robin is currently inquiring into her experience of living with a hidden condition that has become more visible due to the processes of aging. Robin is drawn to images of antique and well played with dolls and uses these old dolls to symbolise the aging self. She supports the proposal of Donaldson and Brits Crecilius that through playing with dolls, a child finds its own self and has found playing with images of old dolls helpful in coming to terms with her aging self. Robin says that the uncanny and intellectual uncertainty that Freud suggests is triggered by doll images resonates with her experiences of uncertainty and vulnerability as a woman aging with what was once a hidden condition. Meet the entrant, Tara. I am a writer and photographer. I have lived with a disability for 20 years, so creative expression has become important to me. I like to hear stories and share stories, as we all have our own path and place in the world. There is always a different perspective and experience to open your mind to. My entry. I have learned that our paths and lives are not solitary. Our paths meander and meet with those of others, sometimes side by side, other times taking different angles to different outcomes. Like colours swirling, our lives interact and leave a rainbow of experiences and views of the world. A Fine Harvest by Tara. We can all use our voice to share our unique history. It helps us rejoice in a range of stories. We all need to listen to a different position so we can understand and find common land. Our stories combine, intertwine like grapevines. They yield a harvest which could be the finest. We all bring in colour and wonderful texture to add our flavour with or without conjecture. A fine harvest. Together we are stronger and make the story longer with segues and branches. We should take our chances to share our history and remove the mystery. We would like to thank the following people and organisations who contributed to iDay 2024 through the Interim Steering Committee. Kat Reid, Women with Disabilities ACT, Shannon Kolak, ACT Down Syndrome and Intellectual Disability, Harry Bangu, Rebus Theatre Company, Renee Heaton, ACT Disability Reference Group, Louise Bannister, Member and Contributor. iDay is supported by the ACT Government. Coming up, voice, power, identity and self-direction. Stay tuned. We'll be returning shortly with our panel discussion led by Ellen Fanning, ABC radio and television host, and joined by guests Dr. Rhonda Galbally AC, former Disability Royal Commissioner, Sean Fitzgerald, founder of Consumers in Control and pioneer of self-directed funding in the ACT, Renee Heaton, chair of the Disability Reference Group, Kat Reid, Chief Executive Officer, Women with Disabilities ACT, Angela Brado, ACT Down Syndrome and Intellectual Disability Representative, and Craig Wallace, Head of Policy, Advocacy for Inclusion.
So welcome back, everyone. And to those of you that are just joining us now, welcome. My name's Diana Mellor, and I'm Chair of the Board of Management of Advocacy for Inclusion, or AFI for short. I'm a middle-aged woman with dark brown shoulder-length hair. I'm wearing a multicoloured top and dark green glasses. My background is beige in colour, and I've got the logos of IDAY, AFI, and Women with Disabilities in my background. I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the lands of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Canberrans and respect their elders past and present. AFI thanks the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people for their ongoing custodianship for the plains, mountains and rivers of Canberra. Sovereignty was never ceded, and this was and always will be Aboriginal land. For those of you that were with us during the side event, we hope that you're able to see some of the fantastic words and images that were shown during the break. Thank you, Ravi, Robin and Tara for sharing. This is an accessibility reminder for anyone who's speaking to please remember to speak at a rate where our interpreters and captioners can keep up in support of making this an accessible session for us all. Please also provide a brief description of your appearance when you speak for the first time. And now it's my absolute privilege to introduce renowned national ABC radio and television host Ellen Fanning as our MC for the second part of today's event. Ellen is an Australian journalist and broadcaster. She's worked at the Nine Network, SBS and the ABC. And these days, she hosts a drive program on Brisbane ABC radio. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you for that very kind introduction. I'm a journalist sitting in a car on a very hot day because my capacity to remember what time it is in any time zone in Australia is limited. I was hoping to be at my desk, but you've caught me on a beautiful Brisbane day. So I have short grey hair and glasses, and I have a white top on and a scarf, and I smile a lot when I talk. The people I'd like to introduce today are people who can help us talk about the importance of the control over IDAY from their own experiences and what that means for identity, what that means for advocacy, and what that means for self-determination. I would also like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people for their ongoing custodianship of the plains, mountains and rivers of Canberra. And I'm speaking to you today from the lands of the Turrbal and the Yuggera people who have lived for thousands of years on either side of the Brisbane River, which is in a city called Meanjin. This afternoon, we're going to be focusing on our lives, our voices, shaping the future through power, voice, identity and self-direction. And I'm able to name most of the panellists on the group today. Dr. Rhonda Galbally, AC, is with us. She's a former Disability Royal Commissioner. We're very pleased to have her along. Sean Fitzgerald is the founder of Consumers in Control. He's also a pioneer of self-directed funding in the ACT. Renee Heaton is the chair of the Disability Reference Group. Angela Brado is with us today along with Kat. Angela is from the ACT Down Syndrome and Intellectual Disability Reference Group and member, and Kat is sitting beside her in a room today. Kat Kat is the Chief Executive Officer of Women with Disabilities ACT, and Craig Wallace is my great friend and one of the smartest people in the policy space in the Australian landscape. He's the Head of Policy at Advocacy for Inclusion. So what I wanted to do was start with Craig, Kat and Shannon. Shannon, who is sitting alongside Angela today, to just talk about the importance of IDAY in community hands and why, in the midst of all the challenges with the NDIS reforms in the ACT, there has been such fierce lobbying to get that IDAY back into community hands and community control. And Craig, could I start with you, please?
Yeah, you can, Ellen. Thanks for that introduction. No pressure there. I feel like I need to perform now. Look, I'm Craig, and I'm a middle-aged man in a wheelchair in a shirt and tie with a yellow background with the logos for Advocacy and for Inclusion, Women with Disabilities ACT and the International Day of People with Disability, and I'm wearing a white shirt and a blue tie. Look, I think in terms of why we chose to focus on this, it is actually because we are in difficult times that we need to be seen and present in a range of spaces, including cultural spaces. If you kind of think about it, every successful political movement that has sought to liberate people gets there by becoming seen in the culture. Black American culture, the emergence of queer cultural icons, like you can't underestimate something like the Priscilla movie has slowly kind of imprinted itself on the public consciousness. I think one of the best proponents of this was Stella Young, who passed away almost 10 years ago today. Stella was a serious writer and thinker, but she also knew how to turn the switch to vaudeville. Like, she got the glamour piece. She was a champion of the disability arts, comedy, fashion, and identity. And what Stella knew, I think instinctively, was that cultural dominance was important, but that it won't last if you don't take care of it. Other people can move in and steal it. So I kind of think this is also the picture, like pink washing is a thing. There's blackwashing as well happening. So I think there's kind of a thing about we need to own it, not just have people talking about us, but we need to be controlling the narrative. Secondly, like I just always felt, frankly, a bit outraged and angry that the one day of the year that was meant to be the Disability Day was controlled by somebody else, by a set of bureaucrats sitting in an office somewhere deciding what be palatable to the public. So aside from the practical and pragmatic reasons for doing this, I just felt offended that we weren't running our own day. It just felt off to me and meant that I couldn't enjoy it and participate in it. And if you want to change something, just grab hold of it and do it yourself, I've found. So that's kind of what's led us here. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that, Craig. And if I can turn to Kat Reid now. As I say, Kat Reid is the Chief Executive Officer, Women with Disabilities ACT. Hi, Kat.
Hello. I'll just quickly introduce myself as well. So, yes, as you said, I'm Kat. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a person in my late 20s. I have long, dark brown hair. I'm wearing a burgundy colored top today, and I've got a background which has the logos of Women with Disabilities ACT, Advocacy for Inclusion, and International Day for People with Disabilities in the background. So, wow, Craig, it's going to be a bit hard to follow you there because I think you prepared such a wonderful response. Look, I'm in full agreement with Craig, and I think nothing about us without us has been such a strong chant for the community for a very long time. And pride itself and disability pride has been a discussion and part of that. And it's been so central to our movement. And it's still an ongoing discussion, how we celebrate pride, what pride means, what terms we use. But what's more important is that it's something that we're defining for ourselves, something that our community is, working through and discussing it with each other and able to, put together what it looks like and how we want others to see our pride. And it's such a cool part of the movement because for so long, disability has been something that was seen as, unfavorable or derogatory. And I think especially now at a time where, I think it's not too difficult for me to say that there is a lot of stressful news happening in the disability space, and that has been happening for the last couple of years. We've got the Disability Royal Commission, the NDIS review. It's a hard time, I think, to be a member of the community, but it's also a very joyful time as well. And we don't get very many opportunities to talk about the joyful stuff. And so I think what's really important is that we're now in control of that. We get to say what it is. We get to say how we talk about disability, how we talk about our pride, and make this a joyful day for us. Without having it kind of done for us as well. So yeah, that's why I think it's really important.
Thank you very much for that, Kat. I'm pleased to hear next from Shannon. Shannon, can you introduce yourself and give a visual description of what you look like on the screen?
My name's Shannon. I'm the CEO of ACT Down Syndrome and Intellectual Disability. I'm sitting next to my colleague, and I have 45-year-old woman with brown long hair. I have purple glasses and a black dress with Christmas decorations on it. From our community, I spoke to lots of people that I work with, and people want events that include and truly embrace people with all types of disability, including intellectual disability. Many events that we've seen in the past, our members have told us, when they are for people with intellectual disability, they seem to be for kids or for very young people. And there are plenty of adults with intellectual disability who want to be able to engage with the rest of the community. So we need to make sure that happens. Often event organisers, if they are not people with disability or if things aren't co-designed correctly, they make an assumption that people with intellectual disability, especially complex intellectual disability, can't engage or can't actually participate alongside everyone else. And that's just not true. I think in community hands, with true co-design, people with intellectual disability can help create events that will be inclusive for everybody, and where people with intellectual disability of all ages can participate alongside the rest of the community. I think this has given us an excellent opportunity to create true inclusion around iDay in Canberra, rather than an event that really not everyone can participate in. So we're really excited.
So very practical outcomes from your point of view. Thank you all three very much for that. I want to turn to Rhonda Galbally next. And Rhonda, perhaps you could start by introducing yourself. But I also want you to draw on the decades of experience that you have in this sector. And we're going to start thinking about what does it mean to have a voice? How effective is it to have a voice when in the social media age, sometimes it seems everybody is shouting their own point of view. So does a voice give you real power? Rhonda, if you could start by describing yourself to the group.
Yes, thank you very much, Alan. I think it's appropriate you're in a car as you drive time. I was thinking I couldn't resist saying that. And it's just a delight to be here. And also, I'd like to start by congratulating, the Advocacy for Inclusion and Women with Disabilities, ACT, for taking back this day and making it yours, and to the Interim Steering Committee, and also the side event artists, really excellent stuff. And yes, I think that why I wanted to start there is because you, in some ways, I haven't told you what I look like. I'm old, I've got glasses, I've got red lipstick on, I've got a black dress, and I've got clutter in the background of me, really, is one way to describe it. The topic of taking back power of voice, I think you have in the ACT in taking back this event in part, but you've also done loads of other things. And when I look back in Australia, when you think even from my first foray into the disability rights movement right back in 1979, the power of our voices has been strong. There's been a huge number of achievements. And while times are very hard at the moment, I think it's important to remember that we have come a long way. When we do best, from my experience, is that we all agree, number one, on the top issues. We're happy to prioritise. And I thought I'd just mention my top three. And one would be the proper, full and complete implementation of the CRPD, where inclusion means inclusion instead of inclusion meaning segregation. Second would be the phasing out of segregation, which is what the Royal Commission's recommended. And the third would be relating to Shannon's comments, full inclusion in the community, that barriers are brought down in the community and people are fully included. I think that's really important. But the only way we'll get there, and somebody else mentioned this, was not by being lone rangers, but by speaking through together, coming together to speak, and allowing stars to emerge. I'm just thinking of the First Nations movement and how the attacks on people like Craig, who put his head up, and dares to take a leadership role over the years. I think, I don't mean to embarrass you, Craig, but it would have been quite tough. And I think we've got to get far more generous and far more really able to mobilise behind voices, stop lateral violence and cutting each other down. So we've got to allow, that can be teams and it can shift around. And we've got to be mentoring and nurturing the next 2 or 3 generations to come. And we've got to make sure that people with every disability are included in being able to speak out and have power of voice. And then I think the next thing to do is we've got to have a systematic strategy. And I always list who the stakeholders are that we're trying to persuade. And we've got to have a rolling program of persuasion and briefings and discussions. And it's got to go on year after year, because unless we're interacting in a systematic way, we forget. We're having briefings for journalists once a month, and we're having meetings with bureaucrats. I'm sure we are doing all of these things, but it's whether there's any system and, whether we've allocated different stakeholder groups to different groups so that we know it's all covered. So I think I'll leave it at that. But I think it's the what, the allowing leadership to emerge and really encouraging it, and really questioning, the sort of the difficult ways we sometimes treat leaders instead of celebrating them, because, it's not easy. It's very hard work, as I'm sure the leaders here would be able to tell you about. And they run out of puff if they're constantly undermined. And then the third thing is a really good strategy. So we know that this week we've got 10 briefings, and that's going to be another section of government and MPs and bureaucrats and community organisations. It's amazing the numbers of not-for-profit community organisations that have nothing to do with disability, who still don't know anything about disability and don't employ and don't support and don't include. So they too have to be there as a stakeholder group.
Just before I let you go, Rhonda, can I ask you, reflecting on Craig's reminiscences about Stella Young, Stella's understanding that the job is never done, which is in part what you're saying. When was it done best? Was it around the time of advocacy for the NDIS?
Well, I think that was an amazing time of coming together. And it really was incredible the way everybody came together, really united behind that idea. That was exemplary. And, this huge, major scheme, it just showed what could be achieved with that. And, credit to Bill Shorten, like he challenged us. He said, you won't get there unless you can build a coalition and you can all come onto the same page and all come behind this idea. And I think that was really such an important thing to say. And then to be able that was done is a great credit to the disability movement across Australia. And so I think that is, but the unity around what the NDIS implied, which was that we would come completely behind the CRPD as a nation, the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, which put into a treaty, you know, the disability rights movement from the beginning. I mean, that was amazing that we got that. But then coming behind it, not allowing the sort of the interpretation of it to be slipping as it is, and then the coming behind the true inclusion of everybody, which means they're not left out in segregated settings with their own kind, that there is a plan in Australia that we'll all get behind to phase this out in work, in living, in schooling, in every area. So they're the issues we have to come behind. That's my bid that I'm putting on the table. And I'm not sure that we'll achieve that in my lifetime, but it doesn't mean we can stop. And the talking about cultural, cultural representations of this, and I go back to Crip Camp, that film on Netflix. Every time I'm feeling a bit down, I go and watch Netflix again, and I feel completely inspired, absolutely inspired. It is the most, really encouraging example of cohesion, groups coming together, groups fighting until they won, really sitting in the offices in the San Francisco mayor's office, it's just an amazing story, and I think it's really worth having a look at it for anyone who hasn't seen it.
Rhonda, thank you. Sean Fitzgerald's next. He's the founder of Consumers in Control and a pioneer of self-directed funding in the ACT. Sean, after you introduce yourself, I want you to talk about this idea of taking back control and self-direction. But you come to things with a particular interest and expertise in the ways in which technology can give people more control of their lives. So perhaps you could introduce yourself and speak to that.
Yeah. Thanks, Ellen. I'm a middle-aged man. I'm wearing a check shirt. I wear glasses, particularly for reading, not otherwise. And in front of me, I have what's known as a chin control. I'm paralyzed from the shoulders down, and I drive my wheelchair with my chin. So that's in view as well, right in front of me. I've also got a silver dot on the bridge of my glasses that allows me to control the mouse pointer on screen, detected by a system I've got to do that. And I use Dragon Naturally Speaking to type with my voice. Without that technology, my ability to communicate and to participate in the world would be severely limited. And that's where, Ellen, I've got a background in electronics engineering and computing. So that's where my technology experience brought me into assistive technology, which basically allowed me to get involved with a bunch of people with different disabilities to make sure that they could access the world of computers, telephones, and communicate and participate in the world. It's tremendously empowering to watch people develop skills in computing, on phones, and feel as though they're equal to everybody else as well. And as you do that, they also develop confidence and want to participate in events like this. I'm an equal now became a theme I saw come through in people we dealt with. And that was a program I ran after Consumers in Control with Hartley Life Care, funded by Accenture. So we had a philanthropic IT partner that helped us out, saw value in what we were doing. They poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into the program. We made sure that people got their equipment free, and this is all before the NDIS. So it is possible now. The NDIS is supposed to have picked up on all that. It has done to a greater or lesser extent, depending on the quality of your advisors and occupational therapists, and your planners. So there's all sorts of gatekeepers now that we didn't have in the past, and certainly the programs I ran, that limit people's ability to participate, to gain control of their own lives. And that's a worrying part of the NDIS for me. And I think, with iDay, one of the things that we do need to do is make sure that people have a voice and are confident and can go out on a grassroots basis into society, not just on iDay, every day of the year, any day they're available to do it, where they can engage with people, sort of be bold, engage with the public, and also be aware that they're going to get asked silly questions. And I mean, boy, you want to see some of the silly questions you get asked. But to be open to engage with people and educate as they go through society. And this might even mean in the checkout queue at Woolworths, someone asked you something silly. But, no question should be a silly question. You're educating people along the way. And there's a great sort of position that organisations like Advocacy and Inclusion can have, where we educate folks with a disability to do that in an effective way and not be offended and help break down barriers. And it takes, as Rhonda pointed out, it's going to take years, but we've got to keep doing it consistently.
And Sean, why do you're talking about the ways in which technology gives individual people more control in their individual lives.
Yep.
Just talk briefly about we're moving towards the right quality of services, and I hear your concerns about NDIS in regards to technology.
Yeah.
But why, assuming that we're on the road to getting that right quality of services, why do you say self-direction is just as important as ensuring the services are understood and the planners get it and all the rest?
Look, there's a theme that's been running for a long time in the disability community. Nothing about us without us. So that's definitely part of it. But I think the success of Nadia in getting disability community support, that was an AI project that had lifelike face to it. There was a character called Nadia. I was the chair of the reference group for that. We had 4,500 people with a disability input to that. And increasingly the disability community felt as though they owned her. They owned the program. The NDIS spent between $10 and $12 million on it. And we were breaking ground that all the major IT folks, Microsoft, IBM, around the world were saying, you've changed computing with the way you do things. And sure enough, what we did, and I mean people with a disability did, because we were directing the direction that this thing was taking, what we did has spawned a $500 billion a year industry.
Wow.
And that's the chatbot industry. Yeah, everybody's got one. Optus has got one. Rife in America.
Yeah.
And that's just, literally, I think that's 5 or 7 years ago. But that's the IT industry. It moves that quickly.
Yeah.
So, things like that, certainly, people with a disability should understand they did that. That's an empowering thing in itself.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to Renee, thank you very much for those comments, Sean. That is really interesting in terms of the possibilities. Renee Heaton, Chair of the Disability Reference Group, can I come to you now? Ask you to give a description of yourself, but then let's think about what needs to happen to build disability voice across the whole of civil society, including in disability organisations. And really, Sean has pointed us in that direction with some of his comments. Renee.
Thank you, Ellen. Hi, everyone. My name is Renee Heaton, and I'm the current chair of the ACT Disability Reference Group, which is a key advisory body to the Minister for Disability here in the ACT. I'm a white woman. I have dark hair and dark eyes. My hair is currently pulled up out of the way because this humidity is making it a little unruly. I have a petite build and I use a power wheelchair. Today I'm wearing a plaid red and blue and white checked sleeveless shirt. I've got jeans on and you can't see them, but I actually have my slippers on today as well. Shh, don't say anything. Ellen, there are so many answers to your question. And the panelists already have talked to this. I guess we need a lot of things to line up and to happen all at the same time. We need legislative change to place disability rights front and centre. We need policy change so that people can see their rights exercised and respected through supports and services. And we need access and inclusion to be the norm across all facets of life: education, health, employment, justice, safety, the list goes on. Because I feel the key to building and sustaining strong disability voice is to create the circumstances in which people with disability can thrive, not just survive, so that people with disability have the time and the energy, and let's face it, the financial means, because none of us get paid to do the advocacy work that we do, to express their voice. Sometimes it feels really hard. Sometimes it feels like we are the only voices in the room that are saying the things that need to be said. I am going to try and condense my response so it's a bit easier to follow. Practically, what people need to do is we need everybody to listen to each other. Even me, it's a key part of my job to listen to community and the experiences of people with disability so that I can give and the Disability Reference Group can give solid advice to the Minister. Everyone needs to listen as well. If you don't know somebody with a disability, then now is the time to connect. And I would probably say you probably do. They probably just haven't disclosed it to you for whatever reason. And maybe that's a question you need to ask yourself. The thing that you want to get from that connection is a different perspective from yours. We don't get anywhere if we keep being the same. Sorry, Ellen.
Yep, you're right.
And I guess when we're connecting, we want to, and I don't like that we're still in this space of education and awareness, but we are. There are annoying prejudices and stereotypes out there that I don't know where people learn these things, because I'm pretty sure nobody's out there teaching that disabled people can't get a job, or disabled people are less able to communicate, or disabled people can't have sex. I'm pretty sure you don't learn those things from a teacher. So there are things that need to be unlearned as well. Right throughout the consultation on the ACT disability strategy, we heard from everyone in community that just said people just don't get it. So we need people to listen, unlearn some things, and learn some new things. And then you need to put that into practice. We cannot get anywhere, and Christina Ryan talks about this a lot, about words are only words unless you put them into action. So we need political parties to put people with disability on their cards, to put them in an electable position, to support them. We need organisations to appoint people with disability into positions of leadership. And I think we need to also ensure, and Rhonda touched on this a little bit, around that unity of the disability community. We need to support and uplift each other as well. Sometimes it can be really hard to find a space. There are a lot of good, solid, well-informed people on social media saying the things that need to be said. You don't necessarily need to be that person. Sometimes you can just find your own little space, and it might be a quiet ministerial advisory council that doesn't get a lot of fanfare. But if you can find your thing and you can find a space where you're respected and you have a voice, then you should pursue it wholeheartedly. You don't have to know the exact right thing to say in the exact moment, but I think we need to recognize that collectively we can have a huge impact. We can amplify the voices of each other.
And Renee, that was terrific. That was a really interesting point, and I think it's a great one to consider. The awareness piece and the education piece seems to be stretching on forever. To what extent do you jump to the structural and legislative changes in order to say, okay, well, you can get up to speed with the education piece once you're following the law. Thank you very much. I want to turn to Angela now. I'm delighted that she can be with us today. Angela joins us from ACT Down Syndrome and Intellectual Disability Reference Group. She's a member there, and she's sitting beside Shannon today. Angela, could I ask you to give a description of what you look like, and then tell me how people with an intellectual disability get themselves heard, make sure people hear what they have to say?
So I'm a lady in her 30s, wearing a black and blue shirt and with brown hair. I have been to previous I-Day celebrations, and they have seemed to focus on physical disability or on younger people with a disability. The last event I went to was full of kids from the special schools, and it was advertised as an all ages event. I didn't see anyone there my age or older at this event, and it left me feeling like this wasn't for me. I have wanted to see an event with a focus on all disabilities. I would like to see myself represented in the activities and celebrations. When you have an intellectual disability that cannot be seen physically, sometimes it feels like you are misunderstood within the community. I would like to ensure that my voice and other people like me can be heard through some type of I-Day celebration or event alongside people with other intellectual disabilities such as Down syndrome. We are all individuals with different abilities. Two people with the same disability such as an intellectual disability, could have completely different needs and interests. It is important that we recognise this through our I-Day celebrations and host events that reflect the true community in Canberra, not just people with a physically recognisable disability.
Thank you for that, Angela. Then can you talk to me about how do we make sure people listen?
Make sure that the I-Day events are hosted and organised by people with disability, including people with intellectual disability. And remember, nothing about us without us. Teaching the community about people with intellectual disability communicate in different ways, and that's okay. Not everyone communicates like I do, and there is no need to be scared of people who communicate very differently. The sunflower lanyards can be an excellent tool for people with disability to help other members of the community to know that they may need some extra support and patience. We can teach the community about what the sunflower lanyard means, and this could help the voice of people with intellectual disability be heard. If someone sees the lanyard, maybe they might take some extra time and care to actually listen.
And can you tell me, Angela, what is that lanyard?
So this is the sunflower lanyard that people may have seen within the community.
And does it have a tag on the end of it?
You can get the tag online through a separate link.
And when I see that tag, what does that tell me? What does that help me with?
So it helps to recognize that somebody has a hidden disability, and it shows that they may need some extra support.
And if I saw that around your neck and I said to you, tell me why you're wearing that, would you be happy to answer that question?
Yes, I would be.
Yeah. And that would help us to know one another and understand one another?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that, Angela. I really appreciate that. That was terrific. Let's go back to Rhonda and to Kat. I'm interested from your experience, Rhonda, over many decades, and Kat's more recent experience in the community, about how ideas about disability have changed in your lifetime. Just listening to Angela is probably not something we would have done 40 years ago. Listening to women is something we maybe wouldn't have done as much 40 years ago. How have things changed, Rhonda?
Well, I think on a personal level, it's changed hugely for me, from being in denial, which I don't know how I thought I would be in denial, as it was obvious to anyone looking at me that I was disabled, but pretending to myself that I wasn't, through to, the beginnings of absolute rage about the position of people with disabilities, including myself, and rage was a real galvanizer. It brought us together in the early days and helped us develop a movement, where we did try to do our best to make change and get rid of institutions and all those things. But I think that the whole identity issue for me now at this, older stage of life is that I think, how can I have pride in my identity when people are living in terrible conditions, in segregated settings, where they're where they can go through years of not seeing anyone except paid workers who aren't disabled. So there's nobody relating to them, in a sense, including them. And then I think, well, how can we have pride in disability if when children are little, we talk about awareness and education, and yet that's the stage to start it. So when children with every disability and any disability are in classrooms with other children, that's when children learn that, people with disabilities are there. We do exist and not acceptable. There's a certain level of, you're okay, you can be there. I'm saying everybody. When people say, oh yeah, but some people are too disabled, that means that disabled group won't then be part of our pride, because they'll be somewhere else. That's the beginning of not having them in the world. So disability pride to me really, and my own pride, is really, thinking about everyone together when we're little, through to everyone together in neighbourhoods and community houses and recreation and all the things, and of course work, that very, very important, in jobs, because the level of discrimination is just huge. And, the more obviously disabled people are, it's sort of endemic. So that has to be, we can't just go and brief people if then a whole lot of people are out of sight and out of mind and have been since they were, age 4. So it's either, we're either an inclusive society or, this group of people with disabilities, that's us. The alternative is very dark, because it means that, we're not seen as acceptable parts of the human race in certain countries like Australia. So it's a huge issue, I think.
Just very briefly before we go to Kat, you've used a lot of different words there. Is inclusion the word you want to stress? Is pride the word you want to stress? Diversity the word you want to stress? You talked before about prioritising, right? That was part of the issue. But on that question of identity and how disability identities change, which is the point of it?
The point is inclusion being fair, really fair income.
Yep.
That inclusion means every person with any disability being included, and I like to think of embraced, really, really included. And that means that comes to the groups where, people might be queer and disabled, or, come from a First Nations background and disabled, or cold and disabled from they're or young and disabled. Included has to mean something. It's in danger of being used to serve disability when inclusion isn't really what's meant. It's meant inclusion for some people. Yeah. And as soon as it means that's anti-pride, in my view.
Once you're doing exclusion, you're not doing inclusion. The definitions are important. Kat, let's turn to you. How have ideas about identity changed in your lifetime? Can you note changes over the course of your lifetime?
Yeah, this is a good question, and I love this question. I think for me, my lifetime is potentially a bit shorter, from the sense of both, I guess, physical age, but also I came to start identifying as part of the disability community a bit later on. So it's been, I think within the last 10 years, it's been a bit of a slow-ish process. I first sort of started becoming aware of disability politics and aware that I might feel more comfortable identifying with that back in uni. And I would say that in university with a lot of other young people, it very much made me feel comfortable to use a word that I wasn't entirely sure at the time I was able to use. So I think my experience of disability is that I definitely have an invisible disability, and I've been diagnosed as being neurodivergent a bit later on, which is actually quite a common experience for a lot of femme women with disabilities as well. that has meant that, at the start, I wasn't entirely sure that I felt that I interacted with the world like non-disabled people, if that makes sense. I knew that there were things I struggled with and things that I had to ask for, but I didn't necessarily feel as confident. And it was through talking with a lot of other younger people that actually made me feel like this was a community that I could identify with, that there was a lot of helpful use in using the word disability and describing the things I struggled with through that lens and thinking about it in that lens. So I think culturally I felt very welcomed and I felt very like it was something that wasn't really stigmatized as much. However, I have to say, and I very much agree with Rhonda here, although that culturally and socially I felt very accepted and felt very like this was something that people were feeling less and less ashamed about, I still think that the actual outcomes that we're looking at when it comes to, how far we have to go in terms of our own rights, in terms of upholding everything under the UNCRPD is actually quite far behind. And I think that juxtaposition of feeling like the culture and the community is very accepting and we're moving to reclamation language and to start reclaiming and talking about pride, but yet still we have so many things we need to fight for. I think has been very strange. I come from the queer community and the queer movement originally, and I think the queer movement, obviously there's still further things that need to be fought for there, but I think the sheer massive things in the disability space it is quite overwhelming sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
On that, I think you make a really interesting point between the personal and the political and the public. Maybe I can hand back to Craig just to round us out before we hand back to Di. What are your reflections on some of the themes that have come out this afternoon?
So I just think in terms of identity, there's a bit of a thing, like I'm reflecting on what's happened in America and in other kind of social movements where populism has kind of overcome them and is pushed back against so-called wokeism. I actually think there is a lesson for us, that we need to try and speak to people where they are. So where a lot of people are is they are not in kind of bubbles of privilege, but they're really, and they mightn't identify themselves with intersectional movements, even though I do, a lot of people in camp do. But they might just say, actually, for me, I'm just hurting. I'm in deep deprivation. I'm in the outer western suburbs of Sydney with no accessible infrastructure. The disability support pension or job seeker isn't enough for me to live on, and I need our community to start speaking to some of those issues that really matter to people in language I can relate to. Like I do have 3 a.m. worries that we're going to have our own kind of Trumpian movement in civil society and in the rights sector, where we suddenly wake up and realize that our members have marched on and left us and are working on other things while we speak to issues of privilege. So it's going to be a real balance for us to find ways. Like not everybody's going to identify as having pride in being a disabled person, but other people do, and it's an opportunity to forge forward. But we should never forget the people who are just hurting, who just want stuff fixed.
It's a really interesting point and a really good observation about coming back to ideas that Rhonda has brought us through, coming back to ideas that Angela has brought us to in particular, about what's your strategy? What's your strategy? What do you prioritise? And what's your strategy as a community, a diverse community, in order to take the opportunity that's been presented and fought for with iDay and make that real in all settings across civil society. Thank you all so very much for the conversation. It's been really fascinating. I've got about 5 story ideas out of it, so I'll be ringing you all offline. As Craig will attest, he will never get rid of me. And I'd like to hand back.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ellen. We really appreciate you joining us so close to a program on ABC, but also in your car. Thank you to all of the panelists for your very valued contributions. We know that you're all very busy people, and we feel really lucky that you've made time to be part of an event like this. I'd like to thank our Auslan interpreters, Kelly and Georgia, for your help in making our event so accessible. We also appreciate the trust and enthusiasm of the artists, the new steering committee, and our community and government partners, as well as the AFI team members who made this possible. But this is only the beginning. We've got exciting plans for next year, and the best way to keep in touch is to monitor our new website, which is www.actiday.org.au, and this link will be put in the chat. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us, and happy International Day.